Namaste, everyone. We'll go ahead and start, today's session. Let me actually start with opening prayers, and then we can go on to, go ahead and talk about today's speaker and what she's going to be talking about, and then I'll hand it over to her. I'm going to share my screen. I hope everyone can see it. So we're going to do 3 prayers, and we'll start with Ganesha and then Saraswati and Guru. I'm going to start with 3 ohms, so everyone can actually follow on their end. Just stay muted while I'm chanting. Om. 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 Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kuru Me Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada. Saraswati Namastubhyam Varade Kamarupini Vidyarambam Karishyami Siddhir Bhavatu Me Sada. Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Gurur Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Okay, I think everyone is very excited to be hearing about today's topic. And today we have a special guest here who is going to be talking to us about a very interesting topic. And we have Nandini. Nandini is here to actually talk to us about a very interesting topic around Ashta. So the significance of the number 8 and how it's related to our scriptures and what is the link between that and the temples of India. A little bit about Nandini. She's actually been a Hindu Center volunteer for more than 8 years, and she's been an active participant when it comes to all our Jnana, Bhakti, and Seva events. In fact, she's been serving with the Changi prisons for a long time now as a volunteer for religious counseling. And the last 1 year, she's actually, because of the things that were happening around the world, I think she had the opportunity and the blessing to actually start online courses on Vedanta, Tulasi Ramayana, and Bhagavatam. And she's joined chanting classes, Sanskrit classes, and all of that. And with that knowledge and information, she's here to share with us about this specific topic. I'm very excited to learn about this topic myself, because 8 is my favorite number. So I would really want to know like how it's all connected and how it all relates back to our scriptures and what is that significance of that. So I'll let Nandini take away. We are going to go ahead and have her talk for a bit. And if anyone has questions, I know some of you are watching on YouTube as well. And just, send it to us on the chat or unmute yourself towards the end, when there's a Q&A session, and we can directly ask Nandini. I will be asking the questions that are on chat towards the end. I'll be reading out to them for her to answer. Okay, let's give it away for Nandini.
First of all, I must thank all my friends who I see have logged in from Australia, India, Canada, and the US. I'm very grateful for all of you. Zoom and these online talks have made it possible for us to have an international audience for the talks which are conducted by the Hindu Center. So my grateful thanks to Hindu Centers and its teachers for giving us the knowledge and the opportunity to share this knowledge across the world. So my talk today is about the significance and power of Ashta. Ashta is the number 8. So what's so special about Ashta? Is it worth talking about? What can we say about Ashta? It appears there's a great deal of information, and that's what my talk is going to take you through. So Ashta is a very, very powerful number in Sanatana Dharma. It pervades and occurs across almost every instance of our lives, starting from our deities, from the date, the time, the hours, to our pilgrimage sites, to the places of worship, through chants, through mantras, and the descriptions of the forms of deities. And that is what we are going to see in the topic, significance and power of Ashta. So but what is the benefit to us of learning about Ashta? When we go through, we will understand the reasoning behind why many of the common words that we use in our terminology to speak about prayers are actually deriving from this origin. So this is the topic, and you will see the color. I'll explain also about the color as we go on. So Ashta, or 8. This represents abundance. This number is actually the sign for abundance, or Ashta. This figure.
Nandini, sorry to cut you. Can you do presentation mode? Sorry. Just below the Hindu Center logo, there's a little presentation mode. Are you able to see this? Yeah. Do you have two screens? Sorry. I think you can go back to where you were, if that's easier.
The screen I need to close.
Yeah, I think, do you have two screens? Maybe just go back to where we were earlier. It might be just easier. Yeah, this is where, okay.
I just need to also enable the sound also, right?
Yes, when you share, yeah.
Okay, it's already shared. Sorry for that. I'm a bit of a technological newbie when it comes to Zoom. So when we talk of 8, we say, oh, 8 represents infinity. But there's a distinct difference between the 8, the vertical digit 8, and 8, which is lying on its side, which is actually the symbol of infinity. In a way, we can say that 8 represents infinity because abundance, when you say it's unlimited. But there is a difference between 8 and the symbol for infinity. So just to go back to start from the basics, I'm just going to discuss the evolution of the digit 8. So people call the numbers as we know it, as Arabic numerals. But is the origin really Arabic? Actually, the origin is from the Brahmi script, which prevailed in India before the start of this era. As early as the 2nd and the 4th century BC, Brahmi digit was in use. We see it in some of the stupas and the writings on pillar writings. And it was the original symbol for 8 was this letter, which looks like an H with the lower and the upper line missing. This, as time went on, was amended to take the shape of a single wedge. And finally, Brahmi script went out of usage and Devanagari came into being. And then it is now at the current figure 8 looks like this. In Tamil, the original numeral representing 8 was the letter A. So from this shape, in the 4th century or thereabouts, some Arabic scholars took from India to the Middle East the digits as written here, and slowly through the course of time, especially by the 8th century, we saw that these figures actually were amended and they went on to take the current shape. So the current 8 is a Western variant from the 10th century of the Christian era. Now 8, what is its connection with Hinduism? This number is intimately, now we all know there is, in Hinduism, there is one God, Parabrahman, who is the boundless, limitless consciousness that pervades all living beings. But Hindus also worship the Saguna Ishvara in the form of Vishnu, Shiva, or Brahma. And what we are seeing now is the presiding deity of the number 8, who is actually Shiva in the form of Ashtamurti. And Ashtamurti, why Ashtar? Because Shiva, when you say something pervades all entire universe, we're talking of the 5 elements out of which all beings are made up. So air, water, fire, space. So these are the 5. So you can see the Ashtamurtis, and the names of Shiva also correspond to each of the 5 elements, the moon and the sun, and also the last component is Atma, which comes in the form of yajna or sacrifice. So we have the names of the Ashtamurti, Sarva, which is represented by Bhumi Linga, earth. We can see this shrine of Bhumi Linga in Kanchipuram. Bhava, which is represented by Jalalinga. We can see the temple in Jambukeshwaram. Rudra, which is represented by Agni of fire. We can see this in Tiruvannamalai. Ugra, which is the Vayu Linga in Kalahasti, and so on. And this covers the Ashtamurti. So the names, 8 names of Shiva, by which he is known as Sharva, Bhava, Rudra, Ugra, Bhima, Pashupati, Mahadeva, and Ishana. And this represents the 5 elements, the sun and the moon, and the last component, which is the self. Pashupati temple, the main temple, of course, the most well-known temple is in Kathmandu. But interestingly, there is another Pashupati temple in India itself, in a place called Mandsaur, which is close to Indore. And there you have the Ashtamukhi Linga, where the Linga is represented by the 4, on all 4 sides you have the face of these Ashtamurtis, and the second line has the balance 4. So it's a very interesting concept, and Shiva is repetitively associated with the number 8. There is a very famous Nayanmar called Tirunavukarasu, or more popularly known as Appar, and he actually has tells us how important the number 8 is in the worship of Shiva. So please pardon my Tamil, I will attempt to read it out. He says, Atta Putpam avai kolmaru kondu, Atta Murti anadi danbai anaindu, Attamaru cherka adigai vittanar adi cherkum avargale. So he says, if one offers the 8 flowers to Shiva in the right manner, and you surrender to Ashtamurti, the Anadi, the beginningless, these people reach the feet of Shiva. So what are the 8 flowers that should be offered to Shiva? They're also given in our scriptures, and I'm using the Tamil names because we are in Singapore, but they have the equivalent in Hindi and in English if you look it up. So these are Arali, Patiri, Punnai, Sentamarai, Kuvalai, Vellerku, Shenbagam, and Nandyavarnam. These 8 flowers are dear to Lord Shiva, but these are used in external worship. For internal worship, Appar tells us that we should also offer the Ashtagunas, which is Kollamai or Ahimsa, non-violence, Pulanadakkam, which is self-control, Shantam, which is equanimity, Anbu, which is love and kindness, Dhyanam, meditation, Sagippatanmai, acceptance, which is called Kshama, you can in equivalent in Sanskrit, Satyam, truth, and Mayargu, which should be Shraddha or faith in God. And the same verse also talks about the Ashtavinayakas, the shrines extolling the heroism of Lord Shiva. Now we know that we always have many stories of asuras, and some form or the other the deities come and destroy these asuras. But we can't take it just at face value. What we are saying is that we need the help of God to destroy the evil qualities in us. So these 8 shrines, especially all based in South India, which are dedicated to showing the heroism of Lord Shiva in destroying 8 terrible qualities. And each of them is represented by an asura. So in Tirukkovillur, we have Andakasura, who represents ignorance. In Tiruverkudi, we have Jalandhasura, who represents Ahankara. Tirukkurukkai is Manmada, Kama. We may remember the story of how Shiva destroyed Manmada when Manmada fires an arrow at Shiva in order to incite love in him for Parvati. Manmada succeeds, but he's burnt by the third eye of Shiva. So this particular temple at Tirukkurukkai is dedicated to the destruction of Kama or desire. Then Tirupaliyur has represents the temple, which shows where Shiva destroyed Daksha. Daksha represents envy or ego. Daksha was so full of ego that he didn't want to invite Shiva, whom he termed as, a person who goes around clad in deer skin and who lives in cemeteries and so on. And though his daughter Sati was married to the Shiva, Daksha, when he had a great yajna, did not invite Shiva. When Sati kills herself by falling into the yajna pitham, Shiva comes and destroys Daksha. He cuts off his head and gives him the head of a goat. And Tirupalliyur Kovil is one of the Virattanas, the shrines, which represents this. We also have the destruction of Gajasura. Gajasura elephants are full of mada, uncontrolled thoughts. In Tirukadayur, we have the shrine where Yama was actually threatened himself by Shiva. When Markandeya clasped the linga because he is afraid of dying, it was foretold he'd die at the age of 16, Yama throws the noose across and it falls on the linga. Shiva erupts from the linga and puts the fear of God literally into Yama, and therefore Shiva's one name of Shiva is Kalantaka because of that. Then in Tiruvadigai we have the destruction of the Tripura, which the three demons Kamalan, Kamalakshan and Vidyunmali were full of arrogance and power, and they lived in 3 cities made out of metal. And Shiva goes and destroys Tripura, therefore he's called Tripurantaka, some of the names. And in Kandayur we have the temple where he destroys Brahma, because Brahma had 5 heads. And when Brahma tells a lie to Shiva that he actually can find out his origin, at that point of time, Shiva cuts off his 5th head. And a lot of us, sometimes we pride ourselves on our own knowledge of our own learning. And this is a good reminder to us that even the ego which comes from knowledge can be very destructive, self-destructive. So this is just a quick map of the Ashtaviratana Stalams. If some of the concepts are new to you and you would like to go and visit, these Ashtaviratana Stalams are all close to Mayuram. You can also go from Tanjavur or Trichy. And there are 6 Stalams there and 2 near Viruppur. Now again with Shiva, you will find that the pattern of 8 is repeated in the Ashtabhairavas. All of you, if you have visited the Shivan temple, there will always be a Bhairava shrine beside the Shivan. The main shrine will be for Shiva, and then the side will have these smaller shrines which are dedicated to Bhairava. Bhairava is called Dandapani. He is represented by holding a rod, and he'll be usually accompanied by a dog. And I thought there was just one Bhairava. And then I learned to my surprise the Ashtabhairavas. And the chief of the Bhairavas is one called Asitanga Bhairava. And then these are the 7 lower ones, but he's the chief. And this Bhairava really has a swan as his vehicle. Some have a lion, one has a peacock, one has a elephant, and so on. And these Ashtabhairavas are something like the Ashtadikpalas. They're the guardians of the 8 directions. But the Ashtabhairavas were created for a specific purpose. There was a demon called Dhahanasura, and who could not be destroyed by normal means. So from the anger of Shiva comes out the Bhairavas, who are actually quite ferocious in nature. And they are the ones who managed to destroy Dhahanasura. Following the Ashtabhairavas, we have the Ashtamatrikas. So in the Matsya Purana, there is a story of Andhakasura, and who actually invaded Kailash and wanted to capture Parvati. And Shiva took the help of the other gods, and they created these 8 matrikas for the destruction of Andhasura. But in Devi Mahatmyam, it says that for destroying Shumbha and Nushumbha, the Ashtamatrikas were given. You might have heard the story about how all the gods came together and created one they gave each of their powers. They gave their powers, they gave their weapons. So from Brahma came Brahmani, from Maheshwara came Maheshwari, from Kumara or Skanda came Kaumari, from Vishnu came Vaishnavi, Varahi, Indrani came from Indra, and Narsimhi from Narsimha avatar of Vishnu. And these are all fierce, battle-oriented ladies. They were created for the purpose of destroying Shubha and Nishubha. And Chandi in particular is a very ferocious creature. She and Kali together represent Durga. And we are the ones in the battlefield that destroy the demon army and drink the blood. So you might have heard the story of Rakta Bija. Every drop of his blood would result in creation of more monsters. So Chandi came, and Kali came in the form, and they would drink up the blood before it touched the ground so that no more demons would propagate. And this is something like our thoughts. We have one evil thought leads to clones more and more evil thoughts, and we all need a Chandi or Kali in our life to destroy those evil thoughts. So these Ashtamatrikas are very, very important because in the north they're called, the Shitalama Devi, all are from this pantheon. And in the south, we also say, Amman Pota, Amma Potrike. So, when the children get smallpox. So they are actually also in charge of children, diseases of children, and so on. And therefore, people whose children fall ill often seek the help of the Ashtamatrikas in relieving smallpox, chickenpox, and other such infectious diseases for children especially. Then Shiva is also associated with the Nagas, and we have what is called Ashtakula Nagas. There are Ashtanagas. When you might remember that in the Mahabharata, when the Khandava Prastha was burnt up by Agni in order to create the palace of Indraprastha, the many snakes were destroyed. But these 9 snakes escaped. And who are they? One is Ananta, of course. Ananta or Shesha Naga is considered to be bearing the entire universe on his head. He's also the 1,000-headed snake on whom Vishnu reclines. Vasuki is around the throat of Shiva and is venerated. The other snakes, Gulika, Shankapala, Takshak, Mahapadma. So when you go to some of these shrines or you're doing Naga Puja or Nag Panchami day, you will find that the priest when he's chanting the names of Karkodaka, Padma, Mahapadma, Takshaka, Shankapala. You know that he's talking about the Ashtakula Nagas. So these are all just in connection with Shiva. Also the Ashtavinayakas. Anybody from Bombay is aware of the Ashtavinayakas. I had the privilege of visiting all the temples myself. Typically, there are 8 temples. One starts off at Mayureshwar temple, which is in Morgaon. Originally, there were peacocks there, and the vehicle for Ganesha is a peacock there. You go, you visit all the temples in turn, and then you come back and you visit Mayureshwar temple again. So that's the way you do it. They're all around Pune. You can see from the map, they're all of them surrounding Pune. So when we were living in Pune and Mumbai, I got the chance to visit each of these temples. It's all very interesting. In Mayureshwar temple, Ganesha is accompanied by his consorts Buddhi and Riddhi. Siddhi and Riddhi. Siddhi is, of course, means accomplishment, and Riddhi is intelligence. So to accomplish something without Vigna, you need both Siddhi and Riddhi. So each of these temples were actually set up by the Peshwas during the time of the Peshwas between the 16th and 17th century. And there's an interesting story of each temple. I don't have time to tell you each of the stories, but I'll tell you the story of Vigneshwar. Vigneshwar, there was a demon called Vignasura. And he was created by Indra to destroy the prayers of Abhinandan, who was becoming too strong. And Indra always is afraid that his position will be taken away by some aspiring mortal. So he sends this Vignasura to destroy the puja of Abhinandan. And then Abhinandan prays to Vinayaka, and Vinayaka comes and destroys Vignasura. And Ganesha tells there should be no vigna or obstacle to any of my devotees praying to me. But Vignasura agrees, but says that his name should be attached to that of Ganesha, and therefore we call Ganesha Vigneshwara. That's an interesting temple. The Ganesha Purana also has another interesting story in Mahaganapati temple at Ranjangaon, because they say that Shiva, the father of Ganesha himself, before he went to destroy Tripura, which we spoke about earlier, did not do a prayer to Ganapati. And as he set out, his chariot axle broke. Then he realized his mistake. He came back to Ganesha, did his obeisance. Ganesha removed all the obstacles, and then he could go on and destroy Tripura. So even Tripura Antaka had to take the help of Vinayaka. Vinayaka is considered so powerful, and it behooves of all of us to pray to Vinayaka before we start any project. And of course, one doesn't have to talk about Krishna, and we finished with Shiva and just so many instances of Ashta with associated with Shiva. We move to Krishna. Krishna and Ashta are inextricably linked. We know he's the 8th incarnation, he's the 8th avatar, he's the 8th son, born in a jail with 8 gates. He was born on Ashtami, the 8th day of the Shukla Paksha, the waning fortnight. He is considered with the lord of the 8 Vasus, hence he's called Vasudeva. And in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, he says, I am actually Mount Meru of the 8 great mountains. So there are 8 great mountains also, and Mount Meru is one of them. And amongst them, Krishna calls himself that he's 8. In the Ramayana, in Sarga 117, the gods have gathered together because the Sita's Agni Pariksha is taking place, and they are telling Rama, do you not remember who you are? Because Rama is not aware of his divine being. He thinks he's an ordinary man. They say, you are the 8th Shankara among, you are one of the 8 Rudras, you are the 8th Rudra, whose name is Shankara. And so this refrain of 8 in relation to Vishnu or Krishna is constant. It so happened coincidentally that Krishna had 8 wives. He's supposed to have 16,108 wives. 16,000 were the women who were abducted by Nahusha. When Krishna had defeated Nahusha, he gave shelter to 16,000 women who were called his wife, but they were basically the women he succored. 108 because they're supposed to be 108 gopis who were devoted to Krishna. But in reality, he was married only to 8 chaps, and we'll see that in the future. He also had a devoted coterie of Ashta Sakhis or gopis who were just devoted to him. He's also the master of the 8 rasas. You know what is the rasas? Anger, courage, fear, or horror, wonder, love. Almost every dance program we have, and therefore we called off Krishna as Rasa Leela. So, as I said earlier, Krishna declares that Vasunam Pavakast. He says, among the Vasus, I'm Pavaka. Pavaka is another name for Agni of fire. And the interesting story about the Vasus, there were 8 Vasus. One of the Vasu, they conspired together when they found a beautiful cow in the forest, Kamadhenu. She belonged to Vashishta. The Kamadhenu is the cow that gives and satisfies all kamas, all desires. So they found her in the forest, and Prabhasa, who was one of the Vasus, made a plan to steal her. When Vashishta Rishi found out, he was extremely angry. He told, he cursed all the Prabhasas. He says, for what you have done, you have to be born on earth. So all the Vasus sought his forgiveness. They fell at his feet. And he said, okay, you still have to be born on earth, but I'll mitigate the curse. You will immediately after your birth will return to Devaloka. But Prabhasa, who actually did the deed of stealing the cow, will have to live out his span on earth. And we know the story in the Mahabharata, in the opening chapters. Ganga agrees to be the mother of these Vasus. She throws the first 7 children into the river. They die and go back to Devaloka. But Prabhasa, who stole, is born, and his name is Bhishma, and we know his role in the Mahabharata. So these are the names of the Ashtavasus. And it's interesting because Krishna himself declares that he's one of the Vasus. Ashtamahishis are the Ashtabharyas, wives. So these are the names of the Ashtamahishis. And Rukmani, Satyabhama, Jambavati, Kalindi, Mitravindya, Nagarajiti, Bhadra, Lakshmana. There's a lot of stories. Most of them were marriages. Krishna went to their Swayamvaras and abducted them at their desire because they did not want to marry whom their father chose. In fact, for Lakshmana of Madra, her brothers wanted her to marry Duryodhana. So at the Swayamvara, she requests Krishna to bring her. And that story she relates to Draupadi when she says, you had an interesting marriage, but my story is also interesting. Kalindi. Kalindi is the name for Yamuna. So there's a story when Vasudeva is carrying Krishna across the Yamuna river. He's going from jail doors, 8 doors mysteriously open. He's going across the river. The river is in space. So it's the rainy season. The water is rising up, and he's so worried. He keeps lifting his arms because he doesn't want the child to get wet. Until he realizes that the water is actually trying to touch the feet of Krishna. So he lowers the child. Yamuna touches the feet of Krishna, and then the river subsides. In fact, it parts, and he's able to cross the river. So she wants the boon of marrying Krishna, and in time, Kalindi takes human form and is married to him. So Rukmini and Satyabhama are the 2 main wives. So they represent Sri Devi and Bhudevi. From here, you can see which land they belong to. So you can see that Bhadra came from Kekeya. Kekeya is somewhere in the north west. So near Gandhar, in Afghanistan. So he had wives starting from the west to Koshala, which is West Bengal in the east. Madra is up in the north. Ujjain is more to the center. So the entire North India he covered because these were also marriages. Dwarka is completely in the left. Jambavati was the daughter of Jambavan. In the Ramayana, Jambavan wanted to give his daughter in marriage to Rama, but Rama says, I'm a Ekapati Vratam, I cannot marry. In my next avatar, I will marry your daughter. And finally, Jambavati is married to Krishna. So there's so many stories, and again you will see the constant refrain of the Ashtamahishis. Ashta Sakhis. While he had 108 gopis, there were 8 Sakhis who were very beloved of Radharani and Krishna. And these were the 8 ladies. And they were extremely good friends who completely supported Radharani. And as good friends do, they did their duty by adorning her. So one was in charge of her hairdo, and one was in charge of her jewelry, one in charge of her clothes, one was the messenger between Krishna and Radha, one was just responsible for decorating the meeting places, and one was responsible for making sure that their time passed very quickly. And the chief of these Ashtasakis is Lalita Devi. And it's very interesting. When in Brajbhumi, when they do the Radhashtami, the first 2 days before is called the Sashti, is dedicated to Lalita Devi. No Radhashtami puja can start until the Lalita Devi has had her puja done first. So she is given the first respect to Lalita Devi, to the river Yamuna, to the Govardhan mountain, and then only they start with the puja to Radha. So these 8 ladies were the best friends of Radharani and Krishna. They would take turns. Sometimes they would be on Krishna's side. Sometimes they would be on Radha's side when they had their quarrels. But Lalita Devi alone was absolutely devoted to Radha. And therefore, she's considered to be the chief Sakis, the Ashta Sakis. And this is generally the location. You can see that Radharani was from Barsana. Barsana is actually close to Nandgaon, where Krishna was first born. You find it's also close to Vrindavan and Mathura. So if you go to Mathura, from there you can make the round, and there are 6 temples surrounding, in the villages surrounding Barsana, and all the Ashtasakis hail from there. So if you ever go to Vrindavan, to Mathura, you can go and visit the Ashtasakis. Ashta Lakshmi, we are all aware. I will not discuss in detail because most of us know. Adi Lakshmi is the primal Lakshmi, the Devi whom we all worship. And then she's got aspects. She's Lakshmi. She's the giver of wealth. And wealth comes in different forms. It comes in the form of Dhana. She's represented with a pot of gold holding gold coins. Dhanya, wealth is also food. So grains, she's holding a sheaf of grains. Gajalakshmi, wealth is also in the form of cattle, property, elephants in the olden days. So Gajalakshmi, children are a form of wealth. Santana Lakshmi, we need courage. Veera Dhairya Lakshmi, we need success. That is Jaya Vijay Lakshmi. And the most important of all, nothing can happen without Vidya. So Vidya Lakshmi. So sometimes the names of the Lakshmis will differ, but there are basically 8 Lakshmis. The most well-known temple is the Ashta Lakshmi temple in Basant Nagar. It was built in 1974. But now a number of Ashta Lakshmi temples have come up. So you will find them in Sydney, in Houston, in California, Fremont, all over the place. We have the Ashta Lakshmi temples. Ashta. So what is the significance of Ashta in the concept of time? You heard, of course, of Ashtami. Ashtami is not considered very good day for starting any auspicious occasion. So weddings or engagements or starting a new enterprise will not be started on Ashtami. Ashtamis are considered to be weak, except for Krishnashtami and Durgashtami. Durgashtami occurs at the Navaratri during the autumn. And when Ramji was absolutely dejected because he thought he could not win the war with Ravana, he prays to Devi Ma and she assures him of success. So Durgashtami is also called Ashoka Ashtami because it destroyed the Shoka of Rama. And Durgashtami and Krishnashtami are considered very good dates, but the other Ashtamis normally people don't do very good start auspicious events. In time, it's very strange. Time is divided into Ashtapraharas. There are 24 hours in the day, and these 24 hours are divided into 30 muhurtas of 48 minutes each. So if you do the numbers, 48 into 30, you come to 1440 minutes. Divided by 60, you get 24 hours. So typically, you can say, very loosely say, when you multiply, it comes to about 2 3/4 of an hour. But you can say roughly that each prahara consists of 3 hours. So they start at sunrise and end at sunset. So if you have in summer, of course, the praharas will be longer during the day and shorter in the night, and in winter, vice versa. So, but there always will be 8 praharas in the day, and you know the praharas. So roughly, we can say from 6 to 9 is called Purvanaha. Madhyanaha is from 3 to 6, 6 to 9, 9 to 12. Apaharanaha, and then afterwards Sayankala. We have the 4 praharas of the night, which starts somewhere at sunset. And the very interesting thing to note, it's called, the 5th one is called Pradosha. It literally stands for 1.5 hours before sunset and 1.5 hours after sunset. So we talk of Pradosham, in connection with Shiva. And we say, oh, today is Pradosham. And I always thought Pradosham stood for the day, the 13th day of the waxing of Shukla Paksha or Krishna Paksha, which is the waning moon or the waxing moon. And Pradosham is the time usually, and the time changes. So when we go to the temple to do Pradosha Puja, the priest will tell us exactly when it's starting. But Pradosha actually refers to this period, this hour, 1.5 hours before sunset and after sunset. So Pradosha is the time. We say Pradosha and we think it's the date. Because even recently we had Pradosha on this last Saturday, I think. But Pradosha is this time, every Trayodashi, every 13th day is dedicated to the worship of Shiva. So again, you can see that the concept of time is related. So the hour may change because, like I said, it depends on the actual time of sunset or sunrise. And in India, it will be different. In Singapore, it might be slightly different because of the different dates. And it doesn't go by sunset or sunrise according to the time fixed. Because, in Singapore, we start a little later of the time. But in actual sunrise and actual sunset. And the last one, Usha, that you can see here, is what we call a Brahma Muhurta. The early morning, 4:30, Usha is considered that's the time. And in fact, in the music, you will find that there are different tunes which are sung according to the praharas. So in the morning, you will have a raga, evening, you will have a raga. So, and they all come back to the Ashta Praharas. It's again you find Ashta in the hymns and prayers, and we need to understand that. So, what is Ashtakam? Ashtakam is a rhyming quartet with 4 lines. So, we have things like the words will end. Namaste stu Mahamaye Shri Pithe Surapujite Shank Chakra Gada Haste Mahalakshmi Namostute. So, you can say that it goes like that, but essentially the rhythm of 32 syllables is maintained. The next thing is called Ashtotram. If Ashtakam is this rhyming quartet, then what is Ashtotram? Ashtotram is a namavali, a garland of names of particular deities. I told you Ashta means abundance. And then you have Stotram or Stuti is the praise of the deity. So Ashtotram literally means abundant names or praises of the deity. And Ashtotra can be Ashtotra Shatanamavali or can be Ashtotra Sahasranama. So when you say Rama Shtotram, you really mean that you are chanting 108 names. So the 100 is the abundance and the 8 is the extra, which is used to ensure that you make that 100 because you may forget something, you may mispronounce. It's a kind of a extra thing that is coming. 108 and 1008 are considered to be holy numbers. I'm not going to be discussing that because we have so much of information for Ashta alone, but it's something to remember. And Ashtakams also come, we find this. If you have the Lingashtakam, it says, Ashtadalo Pariveshtita Lingam Sarva Samudbhava Karana Lingam Ashtadaridra Vinashana Lingam Tat Pranamami Sada Shiva Lingam. So what is the Ashtadalopari? Ashtadalopari stands for the 8-petal lotus. At the base of the lingam is actually considered to be on that 8-petal lotus. Lotus is very, very significant in Hindu tradition because it's supposed to be absolutely pure flower which comes out of dirty water, mucky water, muddy water. But from this dirty water, you get that absolutely pure lotus. And it's a metaphor for how from the ignorance and from our bad qualities, we can still emerge as pure as the lotus. So this Ashtadalopari Veshtita, so the 8-petal lotus, Veshtita means surrounded. So that lingam which is sitting on the 8-petal lotus and Ashtadaridra Vinasham. Have you ever questioned what are the Ashtadaridras? No? I was curious. I went and found out. And I found out that the Ashtadaridrams are the opposite of the Aishwaryams. You saw the Ashta Lakshmi. And you know all that which came, you have Santana Lakshmi for progeny, Dhana Lakshmi, Vijay Lakshmi, all these are the Ashta Aishwaryams given by the Lakshmi, and the Dharidrams would be the opposite. So if you have Ayur, longevity, you have Alpa Ayush, or shortened life. You have Arogya, you have Maharogya. You have the Abhivriddhi, prosperity, you have Daridram. You have Putra, you have Aputra. So you have the Ashta Aishwaryams, again Ashta Daridrams, again. And people suffering from daridram or having monetary problems are directed to Daridra Dahana Shiva Stotram. You can go on YouTube and look it out. The Daridra Dahana Shiva Stotram was written by Vashishta Mahamuni and is considered to be a very, very powerful stotram in getting rid of any daridram in your life. It may be illness as now, it may be monetary poverty, it may be childlessness, it may be separation from a loved one, it may be humiliation, avaman, insult and ignominy. Just opposite of kirti is avaman. So whatever it is, this daridram can be reduced, mitigated by chanting the Daridra Dahana Shiva Stotra. Then Ashta appears again in the Hanuman Chalisa. Ashta Siddhi Navanidhi ke Data Asubara Deen Janaki Mata. And I've always been curious, what is Ashta Siddhi? In fact, that was the inspiration for me to start on my research on Ashta. Ashta Siddhi Navanidhi ke Data. What are the Ashta Siddhis? there are actually so many siddhis. If you go through the siddhis, you'll find some of them are like superhero type. You can power of invisibility. You have the power to tolerate heat and cold. Many of our yogis who live in the Himalayas, you can find them. There are videos of yogis wearing barely no clothes, living in the Himalayas in the snow and the cold without seeming to be cold. So, with Ashtasiddhis that Janki Mata gave to Hanuman was this: Anima reducing in size, Mahima, Garima, Lagima becoming lighter. Now, it may seem to us that what does this Ashtasiddhi have anything to do with me? Yeah, okay, Hanuman became very small and went into the mouth of Surasa, the serpent, and came out. Then he became very huge and battled with Kumbhakarna. Then he became very light and flew off and carried the Dronagiri mountain with the Sanjeevani herb and saved Lakshmana. But what do the Ashtasiddhis have to do with me? Now, the siddhi is a capability. And what Sanatana Dharma is basically telling us that you have the power within you to attain. In fact, Patanjali in his yoga Shastra, he tells us that you can achieve everything you want. You can become invisible. You can get absolute infallible strength. You can have the power of hearing. You can have the power of Duradrishti, Durashravana. And it all seems like an episode out of Marvel comics, superheroes. But what he says is, it's within you. If you try to explain to an ignorant person, unknown of science, what is the ability of a laser, how can light be manipulated to cut and work in marvelous means, he's not going to understand. And that is similarly the concept that you have the ability in you, you get the knowledge, and you can get these powers. Or even on a very basic basis, you take this Ashtasiddhi, Hanuman, Mahima becomes larger. Communication experts say that, when you're nervous or before you're making a presentation, go into the bathroom and say, I am great, I am superior, I am confident. And then you become larger in your own eyes and then you can achieve things. That is Mahima. Anima, reducing in size. You can show, you can become humble. You can achieve a lot by actually reducing your ego. So that way you can achieve that siddhi too. Garima, becoming heavy. Become heavy with knowledge, learn more things, become in skill and talent. Lagima, let go of your worries. You will have Lagima. Prakti, ability to acquire. Focus, and you will achieve whatever you want. Prakamya, ability to fulfill desires. If you can limit your desires, you can try and become Nishkam. Then your ability to fulfill desires goes up, because when you have less desires, you can fulfill most of it. Ishitvam is the power of lordship. All of us want control over each other, over minds. And you can achieve that with power of speech, with your good behavior. So when you look at the Ashtasiddhis, you stop looking at them as some siddhi which is not achievable. You can translate it in your own life today. So you can gain all the Ashtasiddhis, you can acquire siddhis yourself with a dharmic way of life. So you can see from here, when you say Vashitvam influence, strength, you can give strength and support to other people. You will be able to influence people. You can become small. Humility, learn to serve. You can become great, Mahima, by helping people. You can become heavy. You can contribute, do shramdan, do dan to temples, whatever, you can do that. So Laghima, become light. Simplify your life. You reduce your expenditure, economy. Then you can Ishitvam, lordship, take responsibility, shine, be strong, be there for others. So all the siddhis that were given to Hanuman are also accessible to you in your own life. And that's how you relate back. It's not a story, it's not something mythology, it's not a superpower. These are all the siddhis are directly achievable by you if you do. And you got to think about Hanuman. He calls himself a monkey, but he did something wonderful. He helped his friend get back his wife. And that devotion and his complete dedication to Rama, he's still worshipped in the world. That's one of the things that is really impressive. And I think of Ashta Siddhi Navanidhi Data, then I get the goosebumps. Talking about Hanuman, there are also Ashta Chiranjeevis. I'm not going to the whole list, but you have heard of Ashwathama, Maharishi Markandeya was saved by Shiva, Rishi Vedavyasa. Vedavyasa is supposed to go through all the kalpas, and at the end of our kalpa, he will be still alive. Hanuman, he's called the Chiranjeev, Hanuman Chiranjeevi. Vibhishna was conferred immortality by Rama. Kripacharya. He represents the perfect individual, and he has been kept as a guide. He's supposed to be the guru for the Kalki avatar when the Kalki avatar comes for the destruction of Kali. Parashurama. Similarly, he is the sixth avatar, but Parashurama is going to be the one of the ones who helps the Kalki avatar in this end of this yuga. And Asura King Mahabali. You heard of Mahabali when he put his head down for the third step by the Vamana. Vishnu conferred immortality on him. So that's the Ashta Chiranjeevis. So you'll find this Ashta in different instances. So the Ashtakshari, Om Namo Narayana. So Om Namo, this absolutely is considered to be a source of moksha. It's called the Kaivalya Stotra. And anybody who chants Om Namo Narayana is assured of moksha. Ashtadravya, these are the ingredients which are used in a prayer: coconut, jaggery, sesame oil, sugarcane, lemon, banana, beaten rice. These are all the things that can be offered as prasada or naivedya. Ashtadhatu is extremely pure, does not decay. Idols our murtis are made of Kubera, Vishnu, Krishna, Rama, Kartikeya. All these murtis are made out of Ashtadhatu, which is 8 minerals. It's gold, silver, copper, lead, zinc, tin, iron, and mercury. You have the Ashtamukhi Rudraksha, which is considered to be extremely pure form. So it's powerful. So you have Panchamukhi, different kinds of Rudrakshas, but the Ashtamukhi is considered to be the most sacred. You will find that even in our Namaskar, the Ashtanga, we have the Sashtanga Namaskar. So Sashtanga Namaskar in males, both feet, both knees, both hands, the chest, either the chin or the forehead is there. There's total surrender. All the 8 bodies are on the floor and there's complete surrender. But for men, they do mostly, for women, it's mostly a Panchanga Namaskar because she carries a child. Normally her chest, her waist will not touch the ground. So we have the Panchanga. The Sashtanga Namaskar also takes place in Surya Namaskar. So you'll find that Ashta is a refrain, constant, pervading phrase. So far, we have seen how far for Shiva, for Vishnu, Shiva, Krishna, for Lakshmi, for Vinayaka. You have this Ashta as a constantly recurring number in all the pujas and devotions. You heard of Ashtanga Yoga. I won't go into details. Basically, comprises of these 8 branches. And Ashtanga Yoga of Patanjali. And if one follows the yamas, niyamas, the restraints and the do's of Arun, and they comprise of things like ahimsa, aste, dana, so on. So then the asana, in bodily control, pranayama, breath control, pratyahara, doing good things, dharana, dhyana, meditation, samadhi. So these are the Ashtanga Yoga, and Ashtar comes in there. Even among our directions, so we've covered all the deities, we have covered the hymns, we've covered even the ways of doing puja, and we find that even in time, prahara, and now even in the directions comes Ashta. So there are 8 cardinal directions. So Kuvera is the master of the north. Ishana is from the northeast. Indra is the guardian of the east. Yama in the south. Varuna in the west. Vayu and so on. And therefore, when we are doing Vastu Shastra, what directions, how the buildings are constructed, how the buildings are located, where should the temple face, where should the front door be, where should the windows be, Where should the prayer room be situated? All are dependent on the Ashtadikapalas. So when you're starting a new business, you will face Kubera. You want wealth. When you are, so many of the bedrooms will look towards Vayu, because you want the airy thing. So this is how the decisions are made by the people who know Vastu Shastra in deciding how it should go. And you will see the same refrain even in Tiruvannamalai. Tiruvannamalai, which is dedicated, which is one of the famous Jyotirlingas to Shiva, the whole mountain itself is considered to be a linga. But surrounding the Tiruvannamalai mountain, you have the Ashtalingas, where each of the lingas represent one of the directions. So you can see you have the Indralinga, Ishanalinga, Kuberalinga, Vayulinga. Just like the Dikpalas, you have the Ashtalinga surrounding Tiruvannamalai. And people who do the Girivalam, the walk around Tiruvannamalai, will worship at each of these shrines, which are dedicated to the Ashtadikapalas. So Vastu Shastra. So you always, people ask, when you go to see a house, is it north-south facing? So you want the entrance to be in the north. Okay. Or you want, for a temple, no, you should face northeast. And the south can be the bedroom, because you want a head facing, you don't sleep the head to the north, you sleep the head to the south. So the dining room is to the west. The master bedroom can be to the southwest. So the Vastu Shastra defines where your entrances or which bedroom should face where. So the northeast is dedicated to Ishvara. So in the prayer room, you will have your deities facing in a particular direction. When we do namaskar to somebody, we face in a particular direction. So this Vastu Shastra and these 8 is really dominated by the Ashtadikapalas. And even in building architecture, when you're building a Shivalaya, there are 8 parts. So these are the 8 parts that constitute the temple or Shivalaya. So there will be Shivalinga, Nandi, Balibitam, Tiruvachi, which is actually the arch behind the god. Tirusilai represents Maya, the curtain. And this is usually the curtain which is drawn, before the offering is made to Shiva. And all these 8 parts of Shivalaya are also based on Vastu Shastra. In astrology, also you will find that Ashta is a recurring feature. So there are 12 houses in astrology, and Ashta, the 8th house, Ashtabhava, is a very significant house. So it represents Ayu, it's called Ayu Bhava. The decisions about birth, death, longevity, whether one will stay with one's wife, whether you will get success in life or not, all are determined in the 8th house. Depends on which sign, which planet is in this house. But when you look at your overall chart, the 8th house will be the one that affects all these important parts of your life, whether you will suffer ill health, whether you will have a long life, whether you will have alpa ayush. So the Ashta Daridrams all are emanating from the 8th house. And as we know, the 8th house, Shani Bhagavan, also his number is 8. He's the deity of 8 also. He's one of them who affects. So therefore, the 8th house is dominated by Shani. And those people who suffer from Yayarna to Shani, it affects the ill luck that comes out from the 8th house is often attributed to Shani Bhagavan. So people go and placate and light lamps to Shani Bhagavan on Saturdays. They chant the Shanti Mantra, Shani Shanti Mantra, and they pray that. So sometimes if Mars is sitting in the 8th house, they're called Manglik. So you can see the 8th house is not a very, lucky house. It's very strong, it's very influential, and it affects things like our life and other events. Now, in astrology, there is something called Ashtaka Varga. Ashtaka Varga is a point system that gives a picture of the strengths of the planet. From prima facie, you draw up a chart, so astrologers look at it and generally tell you what will be or not. But they use a point system, Ashtaka Varga. So it's considered to be a highly advanced application in Vedic astrology because it determines how much points is going to be given and whether you're going to enjoy, whether Shani is going to affect you directly, whether you will be suffering in life or you will progress. In North India, they also have a system called Ashtakuta, which is the used for matching horoscopes. So there are a total of 36 points, but 8 main Ashtakuta factors are considered, and all of them are given points. So whether you have mental compatibility, power compatibility, health and well-being, physical and sexual compatibility, progeny, outlook on life, prosperity. So they do the matching. And if you get below 18 is not considered good, and a score of 21 or above is considered favorable and people proceed with it. So in horoscope matching, the Ashtakuta is of great importance. Now in astronumerology also, you have the number 8. So the person who's got the number 8 has got high energy, decision and strength, tremendously ambitious and have almost unbreakable will. So these people are extremely good leaders. They're politicians, they're lawyers, they're judges, they're policemen. But as everything, the flip side, if they do not care or nurture their good qualities, the same positive qualities can also affect them negatively. So the politician can be a crooked politician, the lawyer can use his knowledge for ill health and fall into trouble. If they are good policemen, they are also effective conmen. So each of these things. So it depends upon how you use these very positive qualities, whether you nurture your good qualities or you take the other way. So the same qualities that can take you ahead in life can also bring a person with number 8 down. Now this is not, don't get worried, because it just shows that the number is a strong number. There's no wishy-washiness about a person with numerology number 8. Navagraha. Why these are Navagrahas? So why are we talking about Navagrahas in a talk on Ashta? That's because there are 8 planets that surround the central one, which is the sun. So the Ashtagrahas surround Surya, who is the center. And there's also equated in modern science where you have 8 planets. Pluto has been demoted now. There are no longer 9 planets. The 8 planets which are orbiting the sun. There are different equivalents for Rahu and Ketu, who are considered planets in Vedic astronomy. But effectively, the 8 grahas surround this central figure now. So you find this again in even the planets. Now we have something called the Ashtavakra Gita. So we are going on to our writings, spiritual writings. Again, the term Ashtavakra comes. Ashtavakra. So Ashtavakra is actually 8 deformities. So the story goes that there was, as a baby in his mother's womb, Ashtavakra was listening to his father, Kahoda, chant the Vedas. And his father made 8 mistakes. So the baby from the womb actually corrected his father 8 times. And his father, no one likes to be corrected, he got very irritated and started curse the boy. It says, you're finding mistakes, may your body be full of mistakes. And Ashtavakra was born with 8 deformities and called Ashtavakra. Ashtavakra means bends. So with 8 deformities, you will see in this picture he's shown as a hunchback. And so Ashtavakra was very knowledgeable. Since he had got the knowledge even from before he was born, he was extremely knowledgeable. As a young boy of 10, what happened was that in the court of King Janaka, there was a priest called Vandin. And Vandin would challenge Brahmanas to debates. And if he won the debate, the loser would have to go and drown himself. So as so many Brahmanas had been kind of destroyed, and Kahoda's father also was a victim. He went because whoever wins the debate would be given a great reward. So father went and debated with Vandan, lost and had to drown. So Ashtavakra went to kind of set things right. He goes to Janaka's court, and the Ashtavakra Gita is really the debate, the discussion that Ashtavakra had with Janaka about reality. So 12 questions were asked by Vandin as a representative of Janaka to Ashtavakra, but 13th one the priest could not answer, so Ashtavakra won. So he tells the king that he should drown himself too. Then Vandin explains that he's actually the son of Varuna, and Varuna was conducting a great yajna under the water, and he needed Brahmanas to conduct the yajna. So all the Brahmanas who were actually considered to be drowned were not drowned, they were actually attending the court of Varuna. And since the ritual was over, all the Brahmanas would come back. So, and the Ashtavakra Gita, the last question which Ashtavakra explained, it explains about the one supreme reality. Brahman as universal oneness. Whole universe is nothing but that Paramatma. So, and he talks also very interestingly about individual freedom. He says, you don't work to get individual freedom. You start with individual. You're free initially. You are free. You have free will. So therefore, with that freedom comes very high self-responsibility. And this is a direct quote from the Ashtavakra Gita. You're everywhere, forever free. If you think you're free, you're free. If you think you're bound, you're bound. Meditate on the self and you will reach exalted awareness. This is from verse 1.4 of the Ashtavakra Gita, translated by Thomas Browning. And it is amazing that as a young boy, he could come forth. He was a highly learned soul. But Ashtavakra Gita is an important Gita, and we should make an attempt to study it, and it's part of Vedanta. We find this again the same point. So why have we? So Panini also wrote the Ashtadhyayi, which is the handbook of grammar in 8 verses. What you're seeing on the left is really the stamp which was issued by India, celebrating Panini as a grammarian. You also have the Ashtapadi of Gita Govinda written by Jayadeva. It's a beautiful musical piece, relating the love story of Radha and Krishna. And the Ashtapadi, there are different, many Ashtapadis. So in music, in fact, the Gwalior Gharana has a lot of musical composition. So Ashtapadi is really just a meter in which the poem is written. The poem is Gita Govinda, is written in the Ashtapadi meter, and therefore it's called Ashtapadi. And its basis, in fact, all the Odissi dances are based on music from the Ashtapadi. Talking about dance, we have the Ashtavinayakas, the 8 heroines. So each Nayika represents one aspect of dance. So we looked at the hymns, we looked at the devas, we looked at the deities, we looked at hymns, we looked at puja vidhis, we looked at the chants, we looked at the Vastu Shastra, architecture, we looked at the Chiranjeevis, we looked at time, and now we're coming down to dance. So you can see that everywhere the same common thread of Ashta prevails. So the Ashtavinayakas, I won't go in detail, you can always check it out. So we have the heroine who is pining for her lover. She's getting dressed. The one who is sad, the one who is waiting for her lover, this is depicted as Krishna. She's yearning and she's suffering from the pangs of separation. This one heroine is sneaking out at night to meet her lover in secret. The other one is decking. This one is decking up. This one is getting ready to meet. And this is actually what is called the Swadhina Bhartruka. You have the really dominant heroine who's having henna placed on her arms by her loving husband. And this is the one who is waiting with distress for her lover. So the Ashtavinayakas represent in classical dance the 8 degrees of separation, you can call it, from the beloved. There are also 8 styles of classical dance, Bharatnatyam, Kathak, Kathakali, Kuchipudi, Manipuri, Mohiniyattam, Odissi, and the Satriya, all from different parts of India. But these are recognized as 8 styles of classical dance, and all the 8 styles actually use the Ashtanayikas in their depiction. There are games based upon Ashta. So this is actually 8 by 8, 64 column chart, which is the precursor of both Ludo and checkers. So this Ashtapada is made of 64 squares. So there are 4 elephants which stand in the middle, and the object is to use the dice and go across without getting cut by your opponent and come back to the origin. At the other time, these elephants will move in the opposite directions and should avoid conquest. So it's a mixture of chess and Ludo, you could say. This Ashtapada was the former precursor of the Chaturanga, and which is actually Shatranj or chess. And you can see that there are pictures of. So even in games, you'll find Ashta. So in summary, we looked at various prevalence of Ashta across various areas. So it's a constant refrain, whether it's deities, whether it's thalas or pilgrimages points, whether it is how devotees worship them with Ashta Dravya, with Ashta Rudraksha, with Sashtanga Namaskara, we find Ashta in gunas and immortals. So there are the Ashta gunas, we have the Ashta Ishwaryams, we have the Ashta Chiranjeevis. In grammar and literature, we have the Ashtadhyayi, we have the Ashtapadi, we have the, we have it's a prevalent and recurrent motif. Astrology and numerology, Ashta prevails. In yoga, also you have the Ashtanga Yoga, Ashtadishas, directions and architecture, Ashtadikapalas and Vastu Shastra, in dance, in music, in games, and of course in hymns and in prayers. So the Ashtakam and Ashtotram are the 2 things that we learned. So when Ashta is so prevalent, it behooves us to learn more about each of the things that are reflected through these 8 number. So whether it's Ashtakams or whether it is the 8 gunas or how to avail of and get the Ashta Siddhis, we should aspire towards that. So in the end, and I'm coming to the end of my talk, and we talk about we've been talking of Dharidras. There's a very interesting mantra for Dharidra Nivaranam. And I said Dharidra, it doesn't just mean mental poverty. It doesn't mean monetary poverty. It is the lack of anything. Dharidra is basically a lack. So I will chart this, and perhaps you could follow it yourself. I will say it 3 times. First time you can listen, and 2 times I'll try and chant it. And you could look for the Dharidra Nivarana mantra. It's called Sarva Bhada Mukti mantra. So Bhada is obstacles. And this one would basically free you from all bhadas, obstacles. And I think it's pertinent in these times of COVID, where we're having so many bhadas in life, so many separations. Many people cannot travel. So I think this is appropriate. So it goes like this. Sarva bhada vinirmukto dhanadhanya sutanvitaha manushyo mat prasadhena bhavishyati samshayah. Sarva badha vinirmukto dhanadhanya sutanvitaha manushyo mat prasadena bhavishyati samshayah. Sarva bhada vinirmukto dhanadhanya sutanvitaha manushyo mat prasadena bhavishyati samshayah. So here the goddess is proclaiming that with the help of her blessings, the devotee undoubtedly gets rid of all obstacles, gains wealth, grains, dhanyam, and sons, progeny. So if you chant this mantra daily with the japamala, preferably of red sandalwood, and you start it in maybe on Tuesdays or on Durgashtami or Navami and Chaturdashi. And when you offer maybe red cloth, or red odni or chadar, and you pray on this day, it is considered to be good for getting rid of bhadas or obstacles. Lastly, with one of the most important ashtakams, when I mentioned ashtakam, I wanted to mention was Vaidyanatha Ashtakam. Vaidyanatha Ashtakam is again a Shiva ashtakam. Shiva also has a name called Vaidyanatha, where he's a doctor, Vaidya. He's the chief of the doctors, and this prayer, when chanted, is supposed to be extremely good for roga nivarana. So it cures for diseases. So there are 8 verses. It's too long to chant the whole thing. I'm only going to talk about verse 5, 4, and 5. I will put a clipping that will describe it for you. But if you can read it or you are familiar with it, perhaps you could chant. So let's start. Shambho Mahadeva Deva Shiva Shambho Mahadeva Mahadeva Shambho Shambho Mahadeva Deva.
Shri Vaidyanataya Namah Shivaya Vakshrotra Netrangri Vihina Janto Vakshrotra Netrangri Sukha Pradaya Kushtadi Sarvonnata Roga Hantre Shri Vaidyanataya Namah Shivaya.
So there is a concluding mantra which is Balambikeshaya Vaideshaya. So that particular one, the Falashruti, if one can actually Balambikesha Vaidesha Bhava Roga Hareti Cha Japena Matra Japena Namatrayam Nityam Maharoga Nivarana. Sorry, I said it wrongly. Let me repeat it. Balambikesha Vaidesha Bhava Roga Hareti Cha Japenamatrayam Nityam Maharoga Nivarana. Balambikesha Vaidesha Bhavaroga Hareti Cha Japenamatrayam Nityam Maharoga Nivarana. So those who repeat this prayer thrice a day with devotion and pray to Lord Vaidyanatha, who's with his consort Balambika, will remove the fear of birth and death and get cured of all great diseases. Let us make a vow to chant this mantra daily and hope that the world is relieved of this dreadful disease. Thank you. Thank you to all of you for so patiently listening. Thank you again to Hindu Center for giving me the opportunity to talk on this.
Thank you, Nandini. I think it was really amazing with so much of information. I think everyone here agrees to that. I was really impressed. I didn't know there was so much of relationship between the Ashta, I mean, the number 8 to different, just all the different gods that you had mentioned. And then, you know, the temples and scriptures and as well. It does look like there are a few comments and questions. So I'm going to maybe read some of them to you. And there's also like fantastic feedback there. A lot of people are saying it's excellent presentation, which is awesome. And Jayanti has a question. And like in Navagraha, the sun is at the center of the 8 planets. What is the rasa of Navarasa that is at the center or excluded when talking about Ashtarasa? You're on mute, by the way, I think.
Ashtarasas are to deal with the Rasa Leela. So that's love, honor. I have to go back to my one. Go back to. What? I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand the question. What would
I
exactly?
think, yeah, I think this person, Jayanti, is asking, like in the Navagraha, the sun is in the center. So I think in the Navarasas, what is the center? Like, do you know? I mean, I guess that's the
I'm
question.
sorry, I don't know that. I just know that there are 8 rasas or maybe 9 rasas, but what is in the center? No, I am not aware of that. I'm sorry.
Oh, good. Actually, there's one interesting comment, and I just realized that I don't know who put this because I can only see the email, but the person basically said that Chinese also consider 8 to be a good number, very lucky number. So that is a very interesting connection there.
Yes, they consider 8, and you will find that this constant refrain. We talk about the Ashtakuta. They have the 8 dragons, which is the equivalent of the Ashtanagas. But in fact, for the Olympic Games in 2008, it started at the 8th or 8th minute of the 8th month. So they were so particular about 8, they considered it lucky. I wouldn't say that this is a lucky number. We don't have lucky numbers. All numbers are good, but it's just that it seems to me that Ashta is a much stronger number than other numbers. Of course, there is Nava, which is also considered very strong. We have Dasha, we have Pancha, Sashta. I have not done enough of research to tell you of everything, but Nava is considered to be strong. But Ashta, I find it so universal. There are a lot more things I could not include in my talk today because of lack of time. But the Ashta is a constant refrain. And it's surprising that, even in the computer language, 8 is written as 1000 or 1000. And there are 8 bits to a byte. So, and therefore, Sanskrit becomes a language is very easy to use in computers. And that's part of it is because of 8, because you can represent everything in that one digit 1000.
Padmini said the reason Chinese think 8 is lucky is because its a pronunciation sounds like money.
Yes, sounds like money. Yeah. That's completely on money. So in Sanatana Dharma, it's not so much about money. So they keep coming back to the Ashta Siddhis, the Ashta Gunas. So even as Appar says, he says you can worship with 6 flowers, but even more precious is the 8 gunas that you offer to the deity.
Amazing. I mean, I have to say there's so much research done in your presentation today, and I think based on the feedback that everyone's put in the chat, I think they really appreciate it, and it was really amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. And I think Kala's message here says, I walked down memory lane recalling Appar, who recites most of the shlokas I heard from you today, which is amazing. So thank you, Nandini. If there are any other questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask them or drop them in the chat. And we'll give it another minute before we close it off. You should read the comments, Nandini, I think. There's a lot of good ones. I'm going to go ahead and, sort of close today's session as we are reaching 9. Any last words, Nandini, before we do the closing for yours?
Nothing, no. But when I was reading through the Ashtakams, I found that Vaidyanatha Ashtakam is so popular. Everyone knows the Krishna Ashtakam. We know the Mahalakshmi Ashtakams. So if we go back and at least try to learn one Ashtakam, the takeaway would be to see how directly we can take this learning and apply it in our lives or use it to improve our knowledge of Sanatana.
What would you say is a good starting point if someone has not learned any Ashtakams?
Well, the Krishnashtakam is very good. It goes like Vasudeva Sutan Devam Kamsa Chanura Mardhanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagat. So anybody who's studying the Gita is familiar with this verse because it comes in the invocation. that's a good start to learn this particular verse. And if you want money or other benefits, of course, you can learn the Mahalakshmi Ashtakam. There's Ashta Lakshmi Stotram also, if you are particular about that. Or please learn the Vaidyanath Ashtakam. So Vaidyanath Ashtakam, the Krishna Ashtakam, and the Mahalakshmi Ashtakam would be a good place to learn 3 Ashtakams.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Let me go ahead and share. So before we go into closing prayers, I just wanted to make a quick announcement for everyone here. Hindu Center is actually doing a lot of events, even during this turbulent time. In fact, before we went into lockdown, we were actually conducting classes that you can see on the screen. Like, we have a lot of Hinduism classes. We teach children Balagurukulam. We do Vedic yoga, Sanskrit classes. We do monthly bhajans. Now, all of that has actually become virtual due to COVID, and we're trying to keep that engagement with our volunteers, with all the people that come to our center. So if you would like to continue supporting us at Hindu Center, all you need to do is scan the QR code that you're seeing on the screen and make a donation, or you can always go to the website at hinducenter.org.sg/donations and contribute. So with that, for some of you that are new, if you would like to receive any updates and notifications on all the events that we conduct here at Hindu Center, all you need to do is type the number that you're seeing on the screen and add it to your WhatsApp and just WhatsApp join. And this is basically a group account. So what it will do is that it will send you updates on all the upcoming events that we have. And it's not something that people will actually manage, where you don't have to worry about getting updates or random messages. We just send you invites and whatnot. And last but not least, there is an upcoming event that's coming up next week, which is Hinduism 101. And for all of you that are interested to join that session, you can always sign up for that through our hinducenter.org.sg website. So you will be learning some of the basics in Hinduism. So that's something that you can always learn and enjoy. I'm going to go ahead and finish off with closing prayers. I don't know if you can see my screen. And if you can, just close your eyes and I'll be chanting this prayer before we end today. Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu, Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu, Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu, Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu, Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha, Sarve Santu Niramayah, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhave. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, everyone. And we will see you in the next Easy Hinduism session. And good night.